Hi, very good morning. It's not every day I do two videos, but on the basis of the comments in the last video, I thought I'd do another one. And of course, we're looking at the United States debt clock. I'm going to get into that in a little bit, but the reason why we're doing a second video is because I believe that the majority of the American people are living in denial right now. And I've got to say this, there's something else going on that isn't quite being mentioned in any media, even social media, even, on platforms like YouTube, Twitter, X, whatever, Instagram, doesn't matter what platform, something is not being mentioned. And I'm going to put that out there today in this video. But before I do, in fact, no, let's do it now. I think that not only is the US bankrupt, and clearly they are, look at how much their GDP is, 29 trillion, or 29.8 trillion, let's be specific to a certain degree, and have a look at the national debt. A country is announced as bankrupt when their gross domestic produce is overridden by the national debt, and clearly the national debt stands at 36.5 trillion and their gross domestic produce is 29.8 trillion. So they are bankrupt, but let's get specific again. That doesn't mean that they're insolvent. And I think that this is the elephant in the room. I believe that they are very, very close to being insolvent. You know what that means? That means when the people that you owe money to start to take you to court for it because you are not paying it back. Now, we're only looking at the US national debt and the gross domestic produce. If you go a little bit further down to the US total debt, you can see that there is 102 trillion pounds outstanding in total debt. And if you were bankrupt after 30 trillion, then you are definitely 3 times more bankrupt because of your national total debt. And people say, you don't know what you're talking about, Gene. Well, I think I've got a good idea of what I'm talking about. I can't fudge these figures. These are coming from the US State Department. So what I'm pointing out is clear. Now, your interest on your debt, as you can see there with the hazardous warning sign, which is just below your gross domestic produce, is 1 trillion. And I calculated that the DOGE clock against the national debt clock is about 1 or 2 seconds out behind the national debt. So the national debt is still raging higher per second than the DOGE clock is being able to raise money or savings in the DOGE case, yeah. But here's the thing: the American governments aren't using what they're saving in the DOGE clock to pay off the national debt. That money's not being transferred over there because you'd almost slow it down if that was the case. If there's just a couple of seconds difference between the two. But Donald Trump and his government aren't transferring the DOGE savings over to the national debt to cut it down. They're using it to stay alive. And I think that the Biden administration knew this was coming, and they did attempt to reduce some of the expenditure that they could, trim some of the fat off the meat and make it more leaner. And I'm going to explain why I think that what I saw happen when the US left Afghanistan faster than American Airlines or Airways, it was to save the expenditure and what it was costing in Afghanistan. And I think that amounted to over £1 trillion or more since the time they arrived until the time they left. So, but it still wasn't enough. And what we could possibly be seeing now is similar to what happened to Russia in the 1980s, where the states break away from each other. I think that is really close to happening, and it's not being mentioned. I think that's the elephant in the room. I think America have gone beyond the point of being saved. And what we're seeing from the Trump administration right now is a desperate attempt to plug all the holes in the bucket where the water's leaking out and they're still not able to do it, even with what they've done so far with DOGE at this moment. Now, I don't know whether the Americans are aware of this, but the Trump administration are trying to shut the government down. That means when that happens, and if I don't know what I'm talking about, please tell me that I'm wrong in saying this. When the government closes down, it means everything is left to the executive branch, basically down to Donald Trump to run the whole country without any interference. And when he closes that company down, when he closes the country down, or the government down, he will be able to totally go into everything he wants legally and change whatever he wants, fire as many people and reduce the government to whatever size he wants whilst the government is shut down. That's what he's going to try and do. And I'm going to say this as well. Donald Trump, when he was the 55th president, was it? Yeah? In his first term of being president, weren't trying to do any of these things, wasn't imposing tariffs on any other country, wasn't trying to make Canada the 51st state, wasn't trying to just steal cleanly off of countries like Greenland, weren't imposing tariffs on all of his friends and allies. But what we see now is exactly that. This is a panic shot attempt to try and rescue America. And I think it's not going to happen, because there is no way that DOGE is going to be spending, their money on. Let's just dump that phone, I think. DOGE isn't going to be passing all them savings over to the national debt to clear it. It's not going to happen. That national debt isn't something that can just disappear within 4 years' term of Donald Trump, and the problems will persist after that. But I want to say this to everybody, right? Because it's not just the Americans that these tariffs are coming back on. It is all the other countries and allies of America. So things are going to get dearer for us all. And we're going to need to be very shrewd about the way we go about our future business in looking after, our family and that, whatever. I'm very lucky. I live on my own. I have had relationships where, I have, looked after other people's kids. And I've decided that I'm not going to do it again. I shouldn't be buying other men's children's kids' shoes and clothes and taking them on holiday and spending my money on that. Why would I do that anymore? Not in this day and age. I'm just going to look after me, myself and I. And I think that that's what America's trying to do right now. So, that's fair play. But I just think it's all over. And it's what's being done is way too late. And that's why we're seeing this extraordinary behaviour from the White House in tariffs, saying that they're not going to be part of NATO because NATO members aren't putting in enough money. Well, we've just put up 800 billion, just short of $1 trillion, to rearm, Europe. So, it's not the case. What Trump fails to recognise is that America has a GDP of 29 trillion. And, countries like the UK have barely 4 trillion. Yet we have to pay everything out of that, the national health, welfare and all that. We have to pay all the same bills as America does. But we have also a smaller population by 2/3 than America. So what I'm saying is, if you was in a relationship with a woman and she was earning 10,000, you was earning 30,000, yeah, and you turn around to her and say, well, I'm just going to pay the equivalent of what you do, and I'm going to put the rest of my money in the bank, that would be really unfair, wouldn't it? But if you said, we both, I suppose it could be fair if, some relationships do work like that. But if you both said, okay, we'll put 10% of our salaries into paying the bills, and then, whatever's after that, it's fair, it's fair. We both put 10% of what our earnings are. I think that would be fair. And, this is what I think America forgets. We're not earning the amount of trillions that America does on their GDP, and therefore we can't match their military expenditure. But together as a whole, when Europe come together and we all put 5%, that mounts up to a reasonable amount of money, like what we're seeing now with the European Fund, putting up 800 million sorry, 800 billion, yeah, towards rearming Europe. So we can do it without America. The thing is, can America do it without the UK? Because I think probably 80% of the things that are on the shelves in America are things that America have imported. So I think I've got a good idea of what's going on. I think America is very close to being insolvent, and that's different to being already bankrupt, which they are. They're bankrupt because their GDP is lower than the national debt. So is the UK, but by all means nowhere near at the level America is. Now, I'm pretty sure, I haven't done the research on this, if we look into the Soviet Union in the 90s, just before it broke up, I'm wondering whether it was through similar reasons why we could possibly see the America states break up and go it alone, because some are profitable and others aren't, and I know that they would love to already go their own way. So I think we're in interesting times. I'm really interested to see, where things go from here, but I've got a sneaky feeling within the next few weeks we are going to see the American government close, and at that time it allows the executive powers of the White House to completely run solely on its own the American government. Let's see if it happens. So what I usually do, guys, as always, take care of your loved ones. Bye for now.